What is up, YouTube? This is your boy Armaret, bringing you another commentary that's not so much about the game. I actually wanted to discuss with you today some of the comments that the CEO of the NRA gave today at his press conference in regards to the Connecticut shooting. I'll preface everything that I'm about to say by saying that I have owned guns in the past. I am a strong proponent for allowing people to have guns. I believe that they do serve a purpose, whether it be in protection, hunting, sports, game. I understand, and by no means do I think that the solution to all problems is to get rid of guns. I personally think that the major solution would be a stricter screening process and no longer selling high capacity magazines. You know, who really needs 30 to 40 bullets when you're hunting or just shooting for fun? But that's not what this commentary is going to be about. What I want to focus on is some of the incredibly troubling statements that I heard from the NRA in their speech. And it was Wayne LaPierre, who was the CEO, who did the majority of the talking. And the first one that I wanted to bring up was that he said, politicians pass laws for gun-free school zones. They issue press releases bragging about them. They post signs advertising them. And in doing so, they tell every insane killer in America that schools are their safest place to inflict maximum mayhem with minimum risk. And I'm kind of, shocked by this statement, because essentially what he says is every school is free game for just people looking to mow down people, and if that's who you want to kill, if you don't want to be stopped, go to schools. And this notion that the only way to stop that from happening is guns. You fight guns with guns. And he had another line that said, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And it kind of blows my mind that his approach is just so black and white that he makes the assumption that, oh, we say there's no guns in schools, we say no guns allowed on campus, therefore everybody who ever wants to hurt somebody is just going to go to school and is going to kill people. When how many other places out there don't allow guns on the premises? Think about it. Does where you work allow guns in your office? The answer is probably not, but yet there's not shootings every day in office buildings. That logic that he's using, that just because people aren't allowed to have guns makes them easy targets, is seriously flawed. And then he goes on to say, because his feelings of the only way to stop somebody with a gun is with your own gun, as he says, we care about the president, so we protect him with armed Secret Service agents. Members of Congress work in offices surrounded by armed Capitol Police officers, yet when it comes to the most beloved, innocent, and vulnerable members of the American family, our children, we as a society leave them utterly defenseless, and the monsters and predators of this world know it and exploit it. That must change now. And to this one, I will admit, I do like the notion of having security guards in schools. I went to a high school with a resource officer, one man on campus. He's kind of like a cop for the schools. Who don't know, he's there for the entire length of the school day, plus or minus 1 or 2 hours on the back end and the front end. I think it's a good idea. But the thought to say that we give the president security, why not the kids? Therefore, we make think more of the president is not the case. It's a factor of protecting one individual with security versus protecting every single school in America with security. Now, I know all the people complain about spending the tax dollars, but think about how much that would cost to put one security officer paid for by you, the taxpayers, in every school in America. Now, if people are okay with paying that, which I would be okay with paying a little bit more of my taxes to get a police officer in the school system, that's fine. But you can't compare one person being protected, because he's the president of the United States, and like 50 million kids that you're going to need probably 50,000 separate police officers to defend. So if you're going to make a comparison, I think the better comparison would be to talk about the security that you have at a football game, in which you have probably 20, 30 security officers and then none out of the school. So I think I will side with him. Police officers in schools, great idea. Maybe comparison he used, not so much. The next one he uses, there exists in this country a callous, corrupt, and corrupting shadow industry that sells and sows violence against its own people through vicious, violent video games with names like Bulletstorm, Grand Theft Auto, Mortal Kombat, and Splatterhouse. And here's one, it's called Kindergarten Killers. It's been online for 10 years. How come my research department couldn't find it, and all of yours either couldn't or didn't want to know how to find it? Now, first off, if you're gonna quote violent video games, you gotta take out shitty games like Splatterhouse and Bulletstorm. Nobody played that crap. Really? You're gonna call out games that nobody bought as reasons for violence in schools? But I digress. This whole notion of that violence in music and video games sows, a culture of violence. Now, I do agree. I think there's too much violence in the media, especially when you turn on the news every night and it's nothing but people being murdered and stabbed and raped. But I myself, I grew up my whole life playing video games. I played the original Mortal Kombat 1 when I was a kid. I grew up watching, professional wrestling, war movies, and there's not a violent bone in my body. As well as everybody on this YouTube scene, all the YouTube commentators, they probably play more what he dubs to be a violent video game than anybody else out there, sinking in probably a couple 100 hours a week. But none of them are violently going into places and shooting up schools. So maybe, just maybe, that there really isn't a connection between violent video games and people. Maybe it's just that people had the potential just to be an asshole, and that people had the potential to be violent, and that is where violence comes from. Violence does not come from video games, it does not come from movies, it does not come from what we see. It comes from maybe who we are, and all you need is that trigger to set you off. Whether it be the person cutting you off in line, or you being upset with something that maybe your mother said. Nothing to do with the video games at hand. And then he goes on to say, 5 years ago, after the Virginia Tech tragedy, when I said we should put armed security in every school, the media called me crazy. But what if, when Adam Lanza started shooting his way into Sandy Hook Elementary schools last Friday, he had been confronted by qualified armed security? Will you at least admit it's possible that 26 innocent lives may have been spared? Is that so abhorrent to you that you would rather continue the risk than the alternative? So now this guy has gone from an advocate of guns to Nostradamus, saying that, hey, don't blame the NRA. Do not blame guns. If you had listened to me, this wouldn't have happened. Therefore, this is your fault that this person who suffered from mental illness went on a senseless, needless, completely beyond reprehensible behavior. It's your fault. It's not his. It's the media's fault for violent video games, and it's yours for not listening to me. And to that, I said, pardon my language, are you fucking kidding me? Now, hindsight is 20/20, so to go and brandy that about as if some sort of pretentious douche nozzle that you are, that this whole thing could have been avoided if you just listened to me and put armed, trained security guards with guns in there, is ludicrous. Because you know what could have happened? What could have easily happened? Because if you remember, this kid went in there with a bulletproof vest. He could have walked into the school with a bulletproof vest, knew there was a resource officer there with a gun, and shot him first. Then what would have happened to your precious security then with your guns? Nothing could happen, because the one person who was there is gone. But I'm getting upset, so I'll move to the last point that kind of upset me. Was he believed that having the security guards in school was good, and that he and the NRA have a training program called SHIELD that would train any security officer. So we've already discussed that security officers in schools is a great idea. It is a great way to protect the kids. But, oh yeah, by the way, we'll train them and you can pay us. So, now every school's got to have the research officer. They then have to give them a gun, which some of the highest members of the NRA, they make guns, and then they get trained by the NRA. So let me get this straight. So you want all schools to hire a police officer, then you want them to buy guns from you Oh, and then you'll train them how to use these guns. Now, at what point does this sound like a money-making venture and less about the protection of the innocent kids that are in the elementary school? At what point, well, do you think that the American people are that stupid that we don't see this as nothing more than a ploy for money? So with that, I'm going to leave this last comment to the NRA. If you are truly serious about not letting this ever happen again, don't, putting officers in the school is a good idea. But what you need to push the legislation to do, because we do know the NRA has a lot of power, is stop selling armor-piercing rounds, stop selling high-capacity, high-round magazines. I'll give you assault rifles. I mean, I don't believe that people should have them, but I can respect people who like to shoot them. But if you get rid of those two things, you limit the person to maybe 6 bullets, 10 bullets at a time, not 30, 40. A lot of this can be avoided in the future. And I just want you guys in the comments below, put your thoughts. As always, thank you so much for stopping by, and like and favorite and comment, and have a good day.